It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I am your host. Appreciate you riding with us this morning. If you're joining us on either our website or if you're joining us on Patriot FB streaming live, well, that's just great. I appreciate you riding with us. We're going to try to tackle a couple of different topics this morning. I read an article that I thought was extraordinarily good. And, you know, I'm generally a big fan of Ayn Rand. I believe very strongly in the principle that we are individuals that have individual rights and liberties that government was designed and geared to protect. That's all it's really there for. Government isn't there to be anything other than a protector of our rights so that we may do the best that we can with our abilities and our drive and our motivations to be able to improve our own situations without harming anyone else, and yet at the same point in time with the goal of personal improvement of not only our minds and our bodies, but also our financial status, the improvement of the quality of life that we have for our families, et cetera, educate ourselves and so forth. There's a guy who wrote an article in Forbes, and we're going to talk a little bit about his article this morning. He titled it in a way that I think would attract a lot of attention, and I think it has. It says, Obama to Americans, you don't deserve to be free. So I'm going to analyze that with you this morning because while I'm not 100% in agreement with it, and I generally don't agree with anybody on 100% of anything. I don't even agree with me 100% of the time. But the idea of utilizing this particular article as there's really two things that I thought was extraordinarily valuable about it. One, I don't think most people, while they may have read one or two of the fiction novels that Ayn Rand has written, very few people have actually read a lot about the philosophy of objectivism and or her general philosophy about the rights of man, the role of government, those types of issues. And yet she was quite prolific in that area. The point about this is that this should be, and you should construe, you should construe this to be mandatory reading for you as we move into 2014. Why do I say that? Well, first, my New Year's resolution was to read more, educate and improve myself more, and resist. So my resolution takes a grand total of 3 words. Read and resist. And so I want you to read this article, and I want you to put your critical thinking cap on when you do it so that you're having an opportunity to look at a viewpoint that ordinarily would not be in your train of thought necessarily. And I want you to read it with a critical eye so that you're looking at it in a sense that it will maybe challenge some of your preconceived notions, maybe some of your biases. And at the same point in time, may shed some light for you on, how you might look at things a little bit differently than you traditionally have. I guess that's the general goal. The idea that it may wake up some folks because it was posted in Forbes is, and this guy writes for Forbes, so it's not like his first article there or anything, but, and it's only really an op-ed. It's not, like an article that was by one of their staff writers. But it accurately describes the nature of the failings of big government and how we have abandoned the principles of capitalism in favor of a dependent nanny state. that really we've never actually experimented with true laissez-faire capitalism. Certainly not in the last 100 years. I mean, well, okay, before I get there, let me just hit on the other topics. The second portion of our show, or the second segment, we're going to talk about DC, the new Hollywood, money, decadence, and a lavish lifestyle. And so I want you to ride around for that, because I'm going to kind of talk about some of the things that's going on. And we're funding all of this, folks. Our third topic is dependency. Is this the new normal for America? And I'm trying to run a theme here so that you kind of grab a concept of what we've allowed to become. And I do say we've allowed, because it's our job to create and foster a world that's to our benefit. Or in this case, we failed to do that, and now we have to deal with the consequences of that, right? And then the fourth topic is the advent of fascism in America. When did all of this happen? And how has it kind of slipped in right underneath our noses? So let's get back to this topic of the idea of the principles of capitalism. I believe that this should really be mandatory reading. And the reason I say that, and by the way, I strongly espouse the idea that you read some of the other writings of Ayn Rand, not just the fictional story of Atlas Shrugged, which I think is an excellent story. Now, you know, I'm a big reader. I love it. I love to read fictional stories, but I also love to read pretty much anything that's in print. I mean, there's no shortage of things that I find enjoyable to read. I do need, from time to time, a fictional book just to give my mind a break, because I read probably, at any given moment, probably 4 to 6 books. And only one of them is generally fiction. And I read that because sometimes I just need to give my mind a break from the thinking aspect, and I just need to be able to allow myself to kind of fall into the use of my imagination, which you can't really do when you're reading, you know, books about historical issues, or, you know, someone's opinion on and someone's commentary on some topic or issue. There is value, and there are times when your imagination needs the opportunity to soar, and fiction is a great way to do that. Ayn Rand did a great job with Atlas Shrugged, and I strongly encourage you to read that book. I've read it a number of times. There are books that I will read multiple times, because, like watching a movie, you get something out of it each time you read it that you know, either missed before or whatever. And the idea that we need to relook at the principles of capitalism, because, let's be honest, the government and the media are demonizing capitalism, and they're saying, you know, that's the cause of all our woes. But the truth of the matter is, it really isn't, because, well, we haven't actually really truly given true capitalism an opportunity to flourish. The reason I like this article, and I think it's a good one for you to read, is because it covers 2 different aspects. One, it gives you a critical thinking challenge. I want you to read it, and I want you to look at it and read it more than once if necessary. Because what you're trying to do is practice and train your brain, train your mind to pick out and identify what is the author trying to say blatantly through his printed discussion, but more importantly, what is the author not saying or insinuating sometimes between the lines? And what did they leave out that you would have put in there were you the author? And the idea of critical thinking is that we should not just make decisions and determinations based on our preconceived biases or what we hear verbally or orally and that kind of thing. We have an obligation, if we're going to be independent thinkers, to look at multiple viewpoints, even viewpoints that we don't agree with. Because I can read a liberal, progressive written article and actually gain something out of that. I can gain some insight or knowledge. Some case, In some cases, it's more along the lines of the Sun Tzu mentality of know your enemy. Sometimes I gain insight because I read a quote that I think I can use, or they'll reference another article that I haven't seen, and when I click through and I read that, that gives me an insight into what motivated this person to have that idea or concept. The idea of critical thinking is that you're supposed to challenge yourself, to think from a different perspective, a different angle, to look at it from a facet of the stone that you've never looked at before. And the other advantage to this particular article is that it fulfills your requirement of your 2014 resolution, which is what? What? Read and resist. I hope everyone who's listening has actually made that commitment this year. I'm not a big fan of the resolution thing. I think a lot of it is self-deception. But in this case, read and resist is simple to accomplish. One requires the other, and both are integral to the concept of resisting. You have to read in order to understand who and what is happening around you and who the enemy is, and what they're doing to you, and what they're planning to do to you. And resistance requires knowledge. You cannot resist if you are completely ignorant of that which is happening around you. So do yourself a favor and find the link to this. It's at Forbes. The guy's name is Harry Binswanger. I know, that's a heck of a last name. And his slogan is, I defend laissez-faire capitalism using Ayn Rand's objectivism. Now, laissez-faire capitalism, for those of you who have forgotten your, middle school social studies or history or literature, laissez-faire is completely unregulated. No bars, no boundaries, everything is wide open. And the idea of laissez-faire capitalism is that, and of course, the progressive side, or even those who really have never really truly looked at capitalism in its truest sense, say, oh, we can't do that. These companies, they'll be pouring polluted water into the rivers, and they'll be. Well, the truth is, we've never really had an opportunity to see that in action because, one, and I'm not against the concept that a corporation has to be penalized if they do damage to our environment or damage someone else. Remember that the principle of true independence and self-governance, and that includes industries and businesses and individuals, is that we improve our own lives while making sure that we do nothing to hurt someone else. And polluting the environment, or stealing or cheating the public by producing a product that really isn't what it says it is, and those kinds of things, those all fall under the do no harm kind of clause, right? So he references here two paragraphs that Obama gave in a recent Kansas speech, and which calls, of course, for more government control and greater taxation and the principles of collectivism. And he then kind of breaks that down and puts his idea out there about what this is. Now, I don't want to read the article for you, and I don't because then you're going to get my take on it, and that kind of defeats the point of the critical thinking aspect. What I do want you to do is I want you to read it, and then I would like for you very much to read the commentary that comes after it, and I'll tell you why. You're going to find a lot of people who will throw this guy and his thinking under the bus. But at the same point in time, you may see some rays of light that will help you to look at and weigh, and I don't want you to take anybody's opinion as a fact. I want you to, when those people throw his principles under the bus, I want you to look at them and say, okay, is this person coming from a real perspective of reality, or are they just, a bomb thrower, right? What I find interesting about this is that he does talk specifically about the government that spends 1/10 of its present level. I'm sorry, and I apologize. That was incorrect. I was reading something and talking at the same time. What he advocates here is that it would mean the end of all of these regulatory agencies. No SEC, no FDA, no National Labor Relations Board, no FAA, no OSHA, no EPA, FTC, ATF, CFTC, the FAA or FHA, the FCC, and so forth and so on. In fact, he gives you a link to the Federal Register where some 430 of them are listed. And by the way, folks, there are actually thousands, not just 430. The truth is, every one of these administrative agencies and regulatory agencies are operating extra-constitutionally. You've heard me say this before, but it's worthy of mention again. We did not give Congress the right to subdelegate the authority we've given them to a bunch of unnamed, unelected, unaccountable people in literally hundreds or perhaps even thousands of agencies who then make rules and regulations that they promulgate as law, but really aren't, because only, according to our Constitution, only Congress can pass law, right? So the idea, and there's really only two that would exist under the Constitution, and that would be the Commerce Department, which is a federally delegated duty to the federal government, or a constitutionally delegated duty to the federal government, and the second would be border security, because that, again, is a constitutionally delegated authority to the federal government. Because it's easier for the federal government to protect the states versus Texas having one policy and Arizona having another policy and Maine having a policy that would be different from Michigan, let's say, right? So the idea is that when we're talking about the issues of how these groups and organizations and these agencies, for all intents and purposes, abuse us, and because, let's be candid, I mean, there was an article on CNN that there's 40,000 new laws that went into effect alone in 2014. Now, they're not all federal, and they're not all extra-constitutional administrative agency. Many of them are state laws. But remember, you have to remember the concept that, when we have this many laws, it's virtually impossible for anyone to be able to follow, and there's really no way that you can kind of live without. How do you know what to follow, right? How do you know what the law is? Well, we have an answer to that. Alexander Hamilton gave us two statements that very clearly sum this whole issue up for us. It will be of little avail to the people that the laws are made by men of their own choice, in other words, elected. If the laws are so voluminous that they cannot possibly be read, or so incoherent that they cannot be understood, if they be repealed or revised before they are promulgated or implemented, or undergo such incessant change that no man who knows what the law might be today can guess what it might be tomorrow. Now, I got to say, I don't think that you could find a quote that's 235 years old that would be more relevant to today's scenario than that. We have in place these people by our own choice to act as our representatives. And these laws are made by men of our own choice. But the laws are so voluminous that they cannot be read. They are so incoherent that we cannot understand what they mean. In fact, they can't understand what they mean. And in addition to that, it creates a scenario where we are required to hire attorneys to try to wend our way through the labyrinthian, dystopian nightmare of law after law after law that overlap, they contradict each other. I mean, you just can't know. And they are oftentimes repealed or revised before they're implemented. Obamacare has gone through 17 waivers, which the president unilaterally declared. I don't know where he thinks he has the authority to make that statement. By the way, for the record, I think it was 11. I saw an article yesterday. 11 state attorneys general have come out and said that the changes that the president has made to the law, the waivers that he's issued, and we're going to change the date deadlines and all these types of changes that he's made to the law unilaterally without any kind of congressional authority are outside the law. And they are demanding that the president be held accountable for that. Folks, we don't have a king. We don't have a dictatorial ruler who sits there on a high throne and makes determinations that affect us without any input from us, merely to achieve his own either agenda or, perhaps even worse, to create a level of subjugation that impacts and oppresses us. And we have seen, in this case, the law has undergone such incessant changes that no man who knows what the law is today can guess what it might be tomorrow. Businesses don't know what to do. They don't know whether to hire. They don't know whether to fire. They don't know whether to cut their staff, to increase their staff. They don't know. I mean, how can we have an economy that's stable when businesses are constantly running around spending untold sums of money just trying to stay in concert with these unconscionable laws that are just out there? I'm going to leave you with one final quote, and then we're going to take a break. Hamilton, in a second quote, and both of these are from the Federalist Papers. In the first place, there is not a syllable in the plan under consideration, meaning the Constitution, which is what the Federalist Papers described. In the first place, there is not a syllable in the plan under consideration which directly empowers the national courts to construe the laws according to the spirit of the Constitution, or which gives them any greater latitude in this respect than may be claimed by the courts of every state. So what essentially he's saying there is that the federal government is not, and the courts are not in any position to determine and empower themselves to make determinations and decisions on our behalf. The states actually have a co-equal power level associated with that. And when we talk about states that, like Missouri, are trying to float a law to bar and prohibit Obamacare from implementation here in the state, and many other states are doing it, and not just Obamacare, but we're seeing it against all things like national ID laws and drones and all, God only knows what. Those and that, ladies and gentlemen, is one area that we can be reliant upon to push our efforts forth, because the states do have power. It's time for the states to step back in. Please utilize your critical thinking skills. Read this article. Do yourself a favor. I don't care if it takes you 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and an hour, whatever it is. Work at it. I promise you'll benefit from it in the end. I promise you. You're listening to America's Voice. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about D.C., the new Hollywood of corruption and lavish lifestyles, all of which are paid for by us. Hang on, we'll be right back. I told you we'd be right back. Now, I will say for the record, I've had many people say to me, why do you do that? When we're streaming the show, we break and then we come right back. Well, the reason is because we break these segments up so that radio stations can play them. And they have to take commercial breaks because that's how radio is paid for, right? It's free, but they have to run commercials. And so we break the show so that they can do that. Now, on the stream, I don't do that, and on our YouTube videos, I don't do that. I just take a quick break and come right back in. We don't inject the commercials. We may at some point in the future, but that remains to be seen. And speaking of commercials, let me throw a couple of plugs in for some friends of ours. You know, Wits End Classic Barbershop is a buddy of mine, and I would strongly encourage you to take advantage of his nice little shop. He has a place at number 2 Court Square in West Plains, and he been a big supporter and sponsor of AVN over the last couple of years. And he's also a personal friend of mine. He's a nice young fella. He does cuts my hair, whatever few I have left. And I think he does a great job. He's very inexpensive. He charges $10 for a haircut. You can go in there and get an old style, like hot towel shave with a straight razor and the whole 9 yards. It's kind of like a step back in history. I enjoy going there, and I have a lot of fun when I do. There's generally cool people there that we can strike up a conversation with, and in typical fashion, I always try to dominate the room, throw it into a political discussion. Right behind the Wits End Classic Barbershop. And by the way, if you want to call Jason to get his hours, it's 417-372-2053. He also has a Facebook page. If you type in Wits End Classic Barber, and it's WHITTS, you can go on there and like his page. Right behind there is the Patriot Cigar and Tobacco Shop. And Jason and a partner of his have gotten together and put that thing together, and it is an awesome little place. In fact, I went in there one night, and we had a friendly card game with a bunch of guys. No, we didn't gamble. I'm not a gambler. But we did have a lot of fun doing that, and everybody had a cigar, and we sat around, and everybody told a couple of lies, and we had a few laughs, and it was a nice night. Patriot Cigar Bar is at 2 Court Square also. You can go into the front or the rear, and you can reach them at an awesome number of 417-257-1776. That's a great phone number. And if you can find inside there any kind of product that you're looking for that deals with cigars and tobacco and pipes and all kinds of accoutrements and little flasks and all of the normal stuff that goes in with that kind of gentlemanly club type attitude. Great place, great folks. Make sure that you let them know that you heard about them on America's Voice Now. Also, if you would visit our friends over at the Battery Station, they are located at 303 Washington Avenue in West Plains. And they have a website which you can find at batterystation.com, 417-257-7799. And they do a great job. We have a co-op program. If you're a local listener, if you're listening on one of our local broadcast radio stations, there is a co-op program that you can take advantage of there where you can buy bulk food at wholesale rates. Kevin does this purely for AVN and for our listenership as a service. He doesn't make a dime on it, but it does enable you to buy bulk food at wholesale rates. And so if there's an opportunity for you to take care of your family in that fashion, by all means do so. You can buy these big, bags of 50-pound bag of grain or rice or flour or wheat or salt and sugar and things like that. And then just kind of sock it away. Just because you're getting it in bulk and you're getting it at wholesale, you're actually saving quite a bit of money. And we've had listeners who have attested that they've saved up to 50% of their food bill simply by buying in bulk. So, good folks over there at Battery Station. Make sure that you visit them and spend a little time with them. And then Jason Henry, who's a local attorney, specializes in criminal law, does some divorce work and things like that, but predominantly his office works on criminal issues. And he does do federal cases. So if you've got a 922G, he specializes in that firearms case where you've got a situation where you were a felon and you've been found to be in possession of a deer rifle or a shotgun or something like that. And he does work on that type of case as well. Also, other criminal action activity in cases, make sure that you give him a call. He's at number 10 Court Square. And his phone number is 417-256-4100. That's 417-256-4100. His office can also handle personal injury cases and things like that. So give them a call. Make sure that you tell them that you heard about them from America's Voice Now and that Mike sent you over to their office. I'm sure they'll appreciate that. So our second topic here is D.C. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is because There is a new census out from CNS News, which is a great little website because they love the facts and figures over there at CNS. These guys are always coming out with a new census or a new statistical analysis on budgets, on money, and they do a lot of mathematical work. I think this guy must have been, the guy who created the CNS News must have been a math major or something because he loves doing and if you're a person who likes facts instead of just, assertions, this is a great website for you to follow. It's called CNS News, Charlie November Sierra. They are basically indicating in here that the D.C. suburbs dominate the wealthiest list of personal wealth individuals now, and that Falls Church, Virginia, where 31% of the people work for government, they now claim the highest median income in the country. I mean, folks, that they have supplanted L.A., they have supplanted New York, they have supplanted Bergen County, New Jersey, which was, the highest per capita areas in the nation. If you don't know it, and maybe you've heard me say it before, so if you did, don't be bored. The average home in D.C. is on the market for 9 days. 9 days. Ladies and gentlemen, I got to tell you, I live in the Midwest. I have friends who have had their homes on the market for 900 days and haven't sold them. And it's not because they haven't priced it properly. They've dropped the pricing. They've, done whatever is necessary to make the house saleable. The market is just depressed. The banks are, very, very tight about lending practices. Unless, of course, you're one of the lucky ones that the government is promoting that you should get a loan whether you can afford it or not. But the real estate market around the country, I hear places say that, oh, yeah, it's picking up a little bit, but I don't see any evidence of it. And I know a lot of folks, and I speak to folks all over the country. From Maine to California, from Seattle down to Miami, and everywhere in between. I talk to people all the time. And routinely I hear, and I've got family in the real estate business in New York City, of all places, and they tell me the same thing. It might be picking up a little bit, but it's dead. Not in Washington, D.C., however, or the immediate commute radius surrounding areas. House for sale in D.C. lasts for 9 days on the market, on average. Now, that means, remember what an average means, folks. An average means that some don't last that long, and some last longer. But an average is right down the middle. So if you take all of them that are up for sale, and some sold in 18 days, and some sold in 24 days, and some sold in 1, and some sold in 5, the average is 9. Now, we've racked up $8 trillion in debt under the Obama regime in the last 5 years alone. And if you were to take a calculator and take $8 trillion and divide that by 315 million Americans, you would come out with an amount that equals $25,396 per person over the course of the past 5 years. In other words, we've incurred $8 trillion worth of debt. 8 trillion divided by 315 million is $25,396 per person over the last 5 years. So theoretically, a family of 4 should have seen somewhere around the range of $100,000 worth of value over the past 5 years, right? If we've borrowed all that money, somehow or other, it should have made its way into the economy, right? Wrong. Ask yourself where that money may be, because I don't know about you, but I sure haven't seen any of it. I haven't seen in my case, $75,000 worth of value. I've got a family of 3. I haven't seen $75,000 worth of value. In fact, my income has fallen over the past couple of years, in large part directly related to the fact that I spend so much time doing this show for you guys. But the simple truth is that I haven't seen any $75,000 worth of extra value come my way. I haven't seen it in government services that came my way. In fact, my taxes have gone up. My property taxes have gone up. Then they were slightly adjusted down for the loss of value in the marketplace, but I haven't seen $75,000 worth of value. I haven't. Have you? I mean, I'll even give you the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, I haven't seen $10,000 worth of value or $12,000 worth of value per year over the 5-year window. So what that tells you, and how this all comes full circle, is that all of that money is not making it to anybody other than these people who are clustered around the source of the cornucopia from which all good things flow. Namely, Washington, D.C., the district of corruption. You see, the people who live there, and I'm not picking on anybody specifically who lives there. I'm sure there are folks there. If only 31% work for the government, that means the other 69 work for somebody else, right? But you got to realize that 31% work directly for the government. Probably a full 75% of those who work, who are 75% of the 69 remaining work for maybe somebody who works exclusively on government contracts, or works for a company that makes the vast majority of its living lobbying the government. The New York mayor yesterday came out and in front of Bill and Hillary Clinton made the stunning announcement that he is looking to the mark of his new administration is going to be income equality. He's declaring war on income inequality in New York. Now, having lived in New York, I understand that there is a significant disparity in incomes in New York. You know, you've got folks that are making unbelievable money that most of us can't comprehend. I mean, how do you comprehend making $100 million or $200 million a year? And on the other end of the scale, you've got folks that are lucky to make, $40 or $50 or $60,000 a year, which in New York City is barely enough to get by. But while you're screaming income inequality or a war against it in New York, D.C. is doing the exact same thing to the rest of the country. Isn't that a bit ironic? The income inequality of D.C. versus the rest of the nation is staggering. The average household income in the United States is about $54,000. The average income in Washington, D.C. is, I think the number I stated a week ago was 74. I'm going off of memory, but I think it was 74. Now, with all due respect, those people are financed and paid for. All of that money comes from whom? Us. The federal government doesn't produce a product. They don't sell anything. There's no profits to be made. In fact, they routinely lose money when you look at things like General Motors. We bailed out Chrysler, who's now moving out of the United States exclusively. You know, we're paying for all of this, and we're not getting our money's worth. I guess that's my point. These people are living lavish lifestyles of the rich and famous on our dime. And honestly, I got to tell you, it would be one thing if all of this money, all of this decadence, all of this lavish lifestyle that we're paying for produced something for us that we felt like we could say, okay, my lot has improved somehow, right? I've seen some kind of improvement in my life. I've seen higher income. I've seen more liberty, more freedom. I've seen better education for my child. But with all due respect, I got to tell you, it's 100% the opposite. It's 100% in the other direction. I haven't seen more freedom. In fact, my freedom is curtailed at every turn, even in ways that I'm not necessarily immediately cognizant of. Perfect example is, ask yourself, are you having the same level of free conversation with your friends and your family when you're on the telephone, or you're sending an email that you used to have before you knew that the NSA was monitoring everything that you did? Are you one of those people that's felt it necessary to put a piece of tape over your laptop camera? And if you haven't, you ought to, by the way. Are you one of those people that from time to time determines it may not be in my best interest to keep my personal tracking device with me? I think I'll leave this home today. That's a loss of personal freedom. Those people who say, I have nothing to fear, they're fooling themselves. They have everything to fear. Because you don't know who you're being tied to and connected to by the tangled web they weave. I haven't seen better education for my children. I mean, Common Core is being implemented at taxpayer expense, and every review of Common Core and the curriculum and the materials associated with it clearly shows that it is violative of everything, legally that it is prohibited from doing. I mean, federally, the government is federally prohibited from influencing and creating a national curriculum. And most states, including mine, have a prohibition against federal involvement or influence in the education system. And yet, even the most progressive liberal would have to admit that Common Core is a nationally sponsored, nationally bribed program. Our taxes have gone up, but our schools have not improved. Look at your student today and tell me that your student today is smarter than the student 10 years ago, 20, 30, 40, 50, 80. I was sitting down yesterday at a family meal, and we were discussing the idea of education. And there was a 91-year-old in the room. And I can tell you this, that the tests that they were able to pass on civics, on government, on history, you would not pass today. The average American living today could not pass those tests. Education hasn't improved. Now, they've tried every little trick in the book. They've thrown all of these crazy concepts at us and new tests and experiments and all of these, but all of it has been for naught. The unions control education, and now Common Core is even going to steal, to knock them out of the way and become even more damaging. Our children are not taught to critically think. They're not taught to have their own opinion. They're taught and they're raised to be automatons for industry. Diligent, dutiful, unquestioning workers. That's the goal, folks. So where is all this money? I mean, where is the $75,000 that my family should have seen improving our education? We spend more money in our nation for education than any other country in the world. And yet our grades are so low in comparison to those nations, we should be ashamed of ourselves. We're down the 20 some odd percent, lower 20 percentile. That's shameful. I haven't seen a reduction in my property taxes. I haven't seen an improvement in any of the areas. There's no new industries opening up in my community that people can get jobs at. Businesses, their budgets are tighter than ever. I mean, I run a web development and an advertising and a marketing business when I'm not doing this. That's what I actually make a living at. If you need some help, by the way, marketing or send me an email to mike@americasvoicenow.org or visit our website at airbridgeweb.com. Be happy to help you out. But I can tell you that anecdotally, my own experience is that most companies are saying our budgets are down. We don't have the money to market. We don't have the money to advertise. We don't have the money to build a new website. We don't have the money to go out there and do marketing campaigns, social media even. We have to go into to companies and say, look, the best approach that you can take at this point is guerrilla marketing. And that's one of the things that we specialize in, is teaching folks how to utilize unconventional marketing techniques that require less budgetary involvement and engagement, but yet have a better result, or at least a comparable result to the old style method of advertising. Now, some of that's changed based on society, but listen, the truth of the matter is these companies aren't selling more product. They're not making more money. They don't have more money in their budgets. The cost of all of the of meeting all of the mandates and dictates of all of these agencies and extra constitutional agencies has climbed so astronomically, companies literally have to hire people just to make sure that they are led through the labyrinthian disaster that is the regulatory framework that their industry or business requires. How is that a positive benefit for you? How has that helped you as an American? Where is all this money? Where is it? Even the stock market, which you would look at and say, well, the stock market's doing great. These companies must be making extraordinary profits. They're not. The only companies that are making extraordinary profits are whom? You guessed it. Banking. Banking. That is the number one industry in America right now in terms of profitability. There are a few companies that have come up with something creative that, the internet has spawned new industries and things like that. But let's be candid, folks. The banks are making money hand over fist. And since they help write the new regulations, which is ultimately fascism, if you want to really truly define it, and then use government to implement their plan and agenda, all of which is designed to increase their bottom line while limiting yours. There's an age-old adage in the money industry, and it was very commonly spoke about when I worked on Wall Street, which is, in order for one person to make money, somebody else has to lose money. There's a finite amount of it. And the truth of the matter is, we have so much debt at this point, the IMF is talking about a savings tax. Uh-oh. A savings tax. You know what that is? That is essentially what they did in Cyprus and in Greece. Going in and saying, okay, we're going to lop off 20% of everybody's money in all the banks. 401ks, savings accounts, doesn't make any difference. You got to be kidding me. And then they're going to take that money and they're going to give it to governments to pay down their debt. The debt that you never saw a benefit from in the first place, that you're responsible to pay for, and now you're going to get clipped to pay for. Folks, this is insane. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the level of dependency in the United States of America and how that has become the new normal. And what I want you to consider is the fact that that level of dependency is causing, and those people who have become 100% dependent will become the new informants in the police state that's rising. Informants against you. We'll be right back. You're listening to America's Voice Now.
It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. Ain't you lucky? We're streaming live on our website. We're streaming live on Patriot FB. We're streaming live on a host of other stations and systems. By the way, for the record, we will shortly be implementing our new listen line. Now, the listen line will give you the opportunity to dial in to the program and utilize, your unlimited minutes on your personal tracking device. Yeah, this one, the one that the NSA has got with your name and number and mark on it, right? That one. Your personal tracking device, and you'll be able to dial into the show, and at no cost to you because you have unlimited tracking minutes, right? You're going to be able to listen to the entire program, and it won't raise your bill at all. So if you're not accessible to a radio, if you don't want to use data services to stream the show on our Spreaker or our any of our podcasting methods, then you can certainly just dial in. And for those of you who are in low bandwidth areas, or you have only have a mobile phone and it's hard to get internet on the mobile phone, I get it. A lot of websites aren't developed to really be useful on a mobile phone. This will give you an opportunity to dial into the program. You'll just call a phone number and you'll be able to listen in. And if you miss the show, the cool part is you dial in at 11 o'clock and you'll jump right in. They're just going to keep repeating the show for us over and over and over. It's an awesome service. It's produced by a company by the name of Audio Now, audionow.com. And there's no charge for us or for you. I got to tell you, I'm so grateful to this group for being able to do this for us, because this is a request we've had a lot. I'm in Missouri. We live in we live in a fairly rural area. We have a lot of listeners who either don't get us on a terrestrial radio broadcast, or did at one point and don't now, or they're outside of our terrestrial broadcast areas, and they don't have access to internet either because the bandwidth isn't there, or they've got dial-up, or whatever the case may be. This is the perfect solution for them. So if you know someone who's like that, you can. We'll have that number assigned in a matter of a day or two, and we'll be able to start broadcasting that way too. And so I'm very grateful to Audio Now and George over there, who I've spoken to on the phone a couple of times. Tell you what, a great group. I'm very impressed with them. If you run a radio program, if you have a program, and I've already spoken to the folks over at Patriot FB about whether or not they would like to use a service like this, because I think it offers one more way to gather the flock of patriots together, and that's our goal, right? Okay. Make sure that you visit my friend Jason Henry over at Henry Law Offices. He's at number 10 Court Square in West Plains, Missouri. Does a lot of work on the federal side with federal cases, a lot of criminal law. Handles also some personal injury stuff, and also some a little bit more mundane stuff like domestics and marital and things like matrimonial and stuff like that. But his real focus is on criminal and state and federal criminal law, especially gun rights cases. You can reach him at 417-256-4100. That's 417-256-4100. Name is Jason Henry, and he's a friend of mine and a good attorney. Also, make sure you visit our friends over at Patriot Cigar and Tobacco at number 2 Court Square, 417-257-1776. If you'd like to buy a nice gift for someone, they carry humidors and all kinds of accessories. They carry a wonderful selection of pipes and things like that, cigars. They do ship. So if you'd like to order something, even if you're not locally in the area and you'd like their assistance, by all means, give them a call, 417-257-1776. If you are local, stop in there one afternoon, grab a cigar, sit down, have a chat with some friends. Also, make sure that you see Wits End Classic Barbershop right there on the square in West Plains. Jason's a buddy of mine, does my hair every week, and I don't have enough to cut every day, folks. But he's a great young man, good patriot, and cut your hair for $10. I mean, you remember the old phrase, what was it, shaving a haircut 2 bits? Well, I guess if you gave him 2 silver quarters, it might actually still be 2 bits, right? But they'd have to be pre-64 silver quarters in order for that to work. You can get a hold of Jason at 417-372-2053. Okay. Also, make sure that you get a hold of the battery station at 303 Washington Avenue in West Plains. That's 303 Washington Avenue, West Plains. They have a website, batterystation.com. What you'll see on their website isn't even a fragment of what they carry. They carry all kinds of tactical gear. They carry freeze-dried food. They run our bulk co-op and food program. If you're interested in that, when you go in there, just say, Mike sent me here, and he asked me or suggested that I ask for the co-op catalog. They'll know what that means. Okay. You can also reach them at 417-257-7799. And again, they ship all over the country. They're one of the biggest distributors of batteries and flashlights in the country. So, batterystation.com. Okay, so what we wanted to talk about here is the dependency of American people. Because one of the things that government tries to achieve in this day and age, which is completely and diametrically opposed to the model that we create government for, right? And that is to create dependent slaves. And it's becoming the new normal in America for that to occur. I mean, government is really created for one thing: to protect our rights to life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness. Wait a second. Why did I stick property in there? Well, our founders have said to us repeatedly that the right to own property is what makes a citizen versus a subject. And the reason for that is because when you own property, you have a physical connection to the improvement of the general overall society that you're a part of. You have roots. You have a base of operations, if you will. And when you own property, you have the ability to develop and build wealth for yourself. Now, when I say wealth, I don't mean, Hollywood wealth. I mean, that would be wonderful if we were all, capable of generating that kind of wealth. But when I say wealth, I'm talking about just the ability for you to be able to take care of yourself and your family and your needs adequately, so that you don't have to be dependent on government. And the truth is, government was created for what? The one thing that government's really there for is to protect our rights so that we can pursue life, liberty, property, and our happiness. That's the goal, folks. That's all it's supposed to be doing. Now, the entire pyramid has been inverted, if you will. And what was, top down, we the people, has now become bottom up, we the people. We're at the bottom of the tier now. And, when you hear these progressives try to throw all the blame for all of the social ills on and so forth and so on the idea of independence, and they say, well, see, independence is what allowed these bankers to put us in this. Let me tell you something. That's a fallacy, and you're being misled, because President Obama and his regime, and the Bush regime before him, by the way, so don't get any ideas that I am partial to one party or the other. I think both parties have betrayed us substantially. Both parties are seeking your enslavement to debt and to dependence upon them. Mark my words, that's what they're both after. But your dependence turns you into an individual who is no longer capable of making your own functional decisions about your life. Why is that? Well, the truth is, if you are dependent upon government for everything that you have, then you're not in a position where you can independently say, I want to do something different. I want to go out and launch my own business. I want to get a better job. We now have, and by the way, this is another plug for CNS News. They have come out with the new record for 2013 of 10,988,269 people that are now on permanent disability, getting the highest ever monthly benefits. Now, this article was published on December 31st. And the truth is, we've probably hit 11 million because, we were only, 12,000 away. The total number of people that are in the United States that now receive federal disability benefits is 11 million people. Folks, that exceeds, for the record, the entire population of Greece. We now have more people on permanent disability than Greece has people. This stunning level of total dependence on the national government and our society is geared and designed for one thing. Let me tell you what it is. It's not altruism. It is not government being beneficent. It is not the benevolent dictatorship. It's coming across that way now because they haven't yet pulled the rug out. But what it is intended to do is to shrink the roles of those who can and will fight back. Moreover, it's also meant to do another thing, and that is to shrink the roles of those who can support those and assist those who will actually fight back. Why do I say that? Well, anyone who's ever been in the military will tell you that logistically, for every man fighting in the field, it takes 10 people in the back end to make sure that he's got the equipment and the ammunition and the can of peas that he needs to get out there and do the work. And the same will hold true here in the United States of America. When our resistance, and we're not talking about violent resistance here, we're just talking about the ability. Here's a perfect example. This program that I do has no funding. None. Other than me. And occasionally, some of you are gracious enough to jump on PayPal and throw a donation in there. $20, $50, $5. And I'm not denigrating that by any stretch of the imagination, but it doesn't come close to paying the actual total costs. I fund that out of my pocket, at my cost and expense. And the routinely given reason that people don't support the show more is I hear a lot of people say to me, I wish I could do more, I just don't have it. And I'm very respectful, and I'm very grateful for those people who do support this program. And I've had some wonderful folks who have stepped up to the plate. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying here at all. I am definitely very, very appreciative and grateful. And some people have stepped up in a very, very large way over the course of the last couple of years. But it still doesn't cover the actual costs. And so when you are trimmed back, you are no longer able to assist those in the front lines. That's my point. This is the front line. I'm not the only one, but I'm one of those in the front line. I'm not actively sitting down, hunkered down in a foxhole, and we shouldn't be at this time. Let's hope we never have to get there. But right now, our job is to educate and inform and to motivate and activate others, to encourage others to, as they come awake, they're seeking information. They're seeking a clear, new perspective. They have recognized that they have been awoken from a sleep that has been induced by the education system, the media, government itself, and all of the influences that are injected into their minds every day, whether that comes through their ears or their eyes or their work or whatever. The stunning level of dependence on the national government is intended to shrink the roles of those who can fight back. Front lines, back lines, logistics. It's intended to trim you down so that you cannot support the active fighters in the field. And I got to tell you something. Once these people have been compromised, once they have capitulated and fallen to the point where, according to our founders, they have been seduced by the largesse of the taxpayer for their support, those will be the individuals that the government leans upon. Those will be the individuals that will be coerced and manipulated to do what? Well, as we progress down the road of fascism, and that's going to be the next segment that we do, the advent of fascism in America, as we progress down that road, two things happen. One, the resistance becomes more committed, which naturally means that the resistance needs greater resources and greater logistical support. While at the same point in time, those individuals who ordinarily would be either capable of providing support or would be motivated to do so are hampered. And those that are now on that support and have lost their level of independence and are now dependent upon government for their food, for their rent, for their child care, or whatever it is that they perceive to be their crutch, those will be the individuals who will be leaned upon by government to become their informants. Now, I'm sure I'm going to get some email from people who are going to say, "How dare you?" I don't really care. I don't really care what you think of me, and I don't really care whether you like or don't like what I say. If you find that what I say is so objectionable to you that you never want to listen to this program again, then my strongest suggestion would be that you check yourself, because you may well be one of those. And you just don't like to face the truth. I'm going to tell you the truth. And that is that this government operates on the concept of informants. I'm telling you they do, because I know it from personal experience. And when I refused, I was punished harshly. The cost was high indeed. But when they tell you that they will withhold your food, or withhold your rent, or withhold your medical payments, or your medical care through the new dependency mechanism of Obamacare, when they tell you that your child will not get that diabetes medication that she needs, you'll do whatever you're told. When they tell you that your EBT card won't get refilled this month unless you provide them with some names of individuals who are construed to be hostile to the United States, now or once, and guilty of belligerent acts. Why am I using those words? Because those are the words that the federal government itself has written into the National Defense Authorization Act. These individuals will be the one that government leans upon them and tells them, if you want this, then you must tell me who, what, where, why, how. They will be the new informants, the confidential informants of the regime. If you don't believe that our government, and all government, by the way, works the same way, then I encourage you to just go and simply speak to a local police officer and ask them, what is a confidential informant? I would ask you to go to speak to anyone in the law profession and say, what is a confidential informant? I would ask you to say to them, I would like for you to tell me if you believe that our government utilizes pressure to get people to testify against others, help close their case. And have you experienced in your professional capacity as an attorney, as a cop, as an agent of the federal government, have you experienced in your internal and personal capacity as that individual, have you experienced government pressure that has made people do something that maybe wasn't true? I can tell you that false testimony, while completely would take us an entire episode to talk about the biblical concepts of that, but the day in and day out concepts of false testimony have an enormous amount of impact in our nation. And make no mistake about it, that false testimony that's given has been the ruin of millions of individuals and tens of millions of their family members. I'm telling you that your dependence upon government, if you are so inclined to go there, will mold and shape you to be an enemy of the people. Because you'll do anything to make sure that check shows up. You'll do anything. And I do mean anything. You'll sell out your family. You'll sell out your friends. You'll sell out your employer. You'll betray that which you love in order to continue your addiction to dependence. It's no different, ladies and gentlemen, than being addicted to heroin or cocaine. It's the same thing, just the drug comes in a different form. Our next break is happening now. We're going to talk after we come back about the advent of fascism in America. How did we get here? We just covered some of that. We'll be right back. All right. Thanks for riding with us this morning. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I am your host. Lots of ways you can catch AVN. You can catch us live. We stream live on our website every morning. We also stream our show across our Spreaker application, which you can download directly into your mobile phone. And if you don't mind using your data services for it, you can listen live on your phone through the application. Just simply go to either iTunes or the Android Google shop on your personal tracking device, your cell phone, and you can download an application that's called Spreaker. It's like speaker with an R, Spreaker. When you get a hold of that application, you only have to go in there and search for Mike Evans or Michael Evans, America's Voice Now. Just type that in there. Boom, it'll find the show, and you can listen to any episode that you want, past, live streaming, or past shows. You can't listen to the future shows because I haven't done them yet. You can also find us live on our website at americasvoicenow.org. You can also find us on patriotfb.com, where we also stream the show live every day. I encourage you to join Patriot FB. It's kind of a replica of Facebook, but without all the censorship, without all the nonsense, without all the stupidity, without all the tracking. By the way, for the record, Facebook, a lawsuit was filed against them today. Or I don't know if it was filed today. It was the last couple of days. And this lawsuit was filed against them because they have been monitoring and reading people's chats, private chats. This is the one between you and me, not like for all the world to see. And I got to tell you, that's wrong on a whole, that's wrong on so many levels. But it's a clear violation of the Electronic Communications Privacy Act, by the way. So legally, it's illegal. It's also unethical, it's immoral, and it's downright mean-spirited because what they're doing is taking that information and they're selling it. Facebook may not necessarily be the quote-unquote enemy, but they are complicit and they aid and abet the enemy. Your Facebook account and all of your circle of friends is definitively in the hands of the NSA and the FBI. I'm not saying that out of supposition. I'm telling you that for a fact. They want to know who's in your circle of influence. It's a phrase I like to use because your circle of influence is your flock, if you will. Many of you don't think of yourselves as leaders, but I've got to tell you that you are. You don't want to hear that, some of you, because leadership comes with responsibility and most people are unwilling to take on more, but it doesn't change the fact that you are a leader. You can ignore reality, but you cannot ignore the consequence of ignoring reality. This is a quote from one of my favorite authors, Ayn Rand. You can ignore reality, but you can't ignore the consequences that come with that reality. You are a leader, whether you perceive yourself as such or not. Because every one of us has a circle of influence around us. Sometimes it's only as small as our own family. If you're the leader of a family, that is your flock. You are a leader. Sometimes it's a group of folks that we are friends with. Sometimes it's your church. Sometimes it's some folks that we work with, a small group at work. We all kind of hang out together. Sometimes it's in the community. Maybe you're a member of a civic group or an organization. Maybe you are a writer and you put an op-ed in the newspaper on a routine basis. A leader you have just become. Somebody's following your advice. Somebody's following your thought process. Not everyone is a critical thinker. And whoever you are, whatever attitude and whatever beliefs you espouse, somebody somewhere is looking up to that. Even when it's wrong. Your job is to make sure that you are well enough educated about the topics and the situations around which you function or discuss, so that you are dispensing accurate and true information to those people within your circle of influence. Accurate and true to the best of your ability. Nobody's foolproof. Nobody is perfect. And news and information will come forth that will change your ideas and opinions. I will tell you this. The one thing in human nature that is the biggest failing that we have is that when you are educated about what you believe, when you espouse a position, and you find out later on, based on new information that comes to you, that you were wrong, the one failing that we as humans have is that we will never admit we are wrong. And I got to tell you, I think a lot of America is asleep for specifically that reason. I think a lot of folks who voted for Obama are now recognizing the error of their ways. But because they espoused his candidacy and they said, hey, this guy is the greatest thing since canned peas and sliced bread, they are now unwilling to step up to the plate and say, you know what? I remember back in 2008, I told you that this guy was going to be, historic, that it was going to be great for our country, that we would finally be able to, show the folks in the country that this isn't a racist nation, that it might be refreshing to have a guy with a different perspective in office, that this guy is promising change for us, that, we see Washington's broken, and I believe that he can do it. I get it. He was very convincing. Some people didn't smell the danger, the smoke that came before the fire. And listen, that's okay. The real critical thing here is that those people who recognize now that they were wrong then have to be man enough, woman enough to step up and say, you know what? I was wrong. Either I didn't do my own due diligence or I missed the cues. But for whatever reason I was wrong, I'm here to tell you and acknowledge to you publicly, on a personal one-on-one level or one-to-group level, I was wrong. And here's why. And lay out the proofs that have changed your mind. What was it that changed your mind? Was it the personal mandate that you can't ever agree with under Obamacare? Was it a guy who is making dictatorial, monarch-like rulings that you know to be outside the scope of his authority and good moral, ethical, integrity-laden honor and character? Was it the lie he told in order to get Obamacare passed that you could keep your doctor and you could keep your insurance plan? Was it the dirt and the skullduggery of Fast and Furious or the IRS scandal where he promised to come out and resolve it and get to the bottom and nothing's been done? Was it Benghazi? Is it his approval of what the NSA is doing to our nation? Changing the tone and the tenor of everything that we think and feel and communicate about? Injecting paranoia and fear into our populace. Was that it? I mean, I don't even care what the trigger was. The point is, you need to know what's changed your mind about him. And then you need to sit down and just one day just take a couple of quick notes. If you don't carry one of those little, spiral notebooks that you can get for 29 cents in any office supply store or any local store, if you don't carry one of those around so that you can jot things down as they occur to you, you're making a mistake. Because maybe you don't have time to in-depth, analyze what you're thinking at that moment. But later on you will, and now you need the trigger to remind you. And you should analyze it and say, listen, I didn't see this coming. And then be honest about it. But at this point, now you're going to go back to those people that you misled And you're going to say, you know what? I called you tonight because I wanted to talk to you about something. You know, I really promoted, this issue really hard, or I promoted this Obamacare thing really hard, or I promoted this president really hard in 2008 or 2012. And I got to tell you, I think I made a mistake. And I want you to know that I misled you, not by intent, but either ignorance on my part or whatever. Look, it's up to you how you say it. It's up to you how you couch it. It's not my place to tell you how to say it. But there's a thing about the 12 steps of addiction, and one of the things that I'm not alluding to you being addicted or anything along those lines. I just want you to understand that these 12 steps apply in this case too. One of the things that you must come to terms with is that at some point in time, you got to go back and make amends to the people that you harmed. And as a leader, you've harmed people. And you are a leader, whether you believe it or not. Somebody somewhere has been influenced by what you thought or said or did, or your actions or your example. Somebody's been influenced by that bumper sticker on the back of your car that you still haven't scraped off that says Obama 2012. You see, the point here, folks, is that when we are wrong, we should acknowledge that and then take steps to correct that wrong, whatever that was. Now, how does this have to do with the advent of fascism in America? I'm going to tell you. That sums it up in a nutshell. That's why we have it. Because people are unwilling to step up to the plate and say, you know what? I was wrong. It's one of the hardest things for us to do. And I'm not just talking about Obama. I'm talking about your governor. I'm talking about the state reps in your house. I'm talking about the rep in your federal district. I'm talking about the guy who ran for city council that turned out to be some kind of a little Hitlerite tyrant. I'm talking about the person you put on the school board who turned around and within weeks changed. Yeah, you know who I'm talking about. The person that you thought would be a good representative on city council. And no sooner did they hit that city council seat than, boy, you saw a change in their whole demeanor, didn't you? Fascism doesn't just come from the federal government. It's all-inclusive, ladies and gentlemen. And a fish that stinks, the whole fish stinks. It's not just the head. It's not just the tail. It's not just the body. The whole fish stinks. And the mentality that's being injected into all government positions is that anything goes as long as you remain in power and achieve your agenda. And that's both sides of the political aisle, and make no mistake about it. How did we get to the advent of fascism? How did fascism grow in our nation? Because we've refused to accept the reality that we were wrong and then make amends. We've refused to accept the truth that we misled ourselves and others around us, and that to make matters worse, we've compounded the image and the damage that we've done by saying, I don't have the courage to face that and apologize and point out. Forget the apology. I don't even give a darn about that. What I do care about is that you make the correction, because somebody is looking at you as an example. Somebody is looking at you and saying, that person knows more than me, and I follow their lead because I trust them. That is leadership. For you ministers out there, your silence is just as damaging. Your failure and refusal to speak about these issues to your congregation is a crime. Not a crime that you can go to jail for. It's a crime of integrity, a crime of honor, a crime of ethics, a crime of morals, a crime against your God and against your congregation and everything that you hang your hat on. Your refusal, using the cover of, well, we're a 501c3, we can't talk about that kind of thing, we'll lose our tax-exempt status. Really? Is that your greatest fear? Is that your concern? You'll lose your tax-exempt status for telling the truth? If you love wealth better than liberty, if you love the tranquility of servitude better than you love the animating contest of freedom, then go home from us in peace. We ask not your counsel, nor your arms. Crouch down and lick the hands which feed you. And may your chains set lightly upon you, and may posterity forget that you were our countrymen. You don't have to be a minister to have a flock. You don't have to have a constituency to be a leader. Just have to be one person with somebody who looks up to you and looks at you and says, I'm influenced by him or her. I'm influenced by their thinking. Because they know more than I do. I just awoke. And I'm a baby who needs milk before I can chew on steak. That's an analogy that every minister, every pastor, every priest, every religious leader, layperson or otherwise will recognize. But it holds true in this arena as well. It holds true in every arena. Those who have just come awake and said, boy, for the first time in my life, I think I'm going to vote. Because I kind of hear about this guy Obama, and I'm thinking, maybe he's going to make a difference this time. And you encouraged or supported that. And you said, yeah, I think he's going to do a good job. Oh, you do? Okay. Hey, Bob over there or, Kathy, they follow this political thing a lot more than I do. So I'm going to kind of, follow their lead on this. What was that phrase? I'm going to follow their lead on this. Guess that makes you a leader, huh? But as a leader, if you love wealth better than liberty, or if you love the feeling that you're always right, even when you know you're wrong, if you don't have the courage of your convictions and the integrity and honor within yourself to say, I was wrong, you're a part of the problem and not the solution. It doesn't have to be wealth. It can be pride. If you love pride better than liberty, if you love right, being right, better than liberty, if you love the tranquility of ego better than the animating contest of freedom, better than the animating contest of truth, better than the animating contest of being able to say, I was wrong and I misled you, and I'm going to show you how and where, and then you and me together, we're going to make a difference here. Then you can go home from us in peace. We don't want your counsel, and we don't want your arms. You can continue to crouch down and lick the hands which feed you, whether they are dependency hands or whether they are the self-imposed prison sentence that you have committed yourself to. The one that says, I'm wrong, and it's all over, the evidence is everywhere, and I just don't have the courage of my convictions, and I don't have the courage and the strength to say, I was wrong. If that marks you, then may your chains sit lightly upon you, and may posterity forget that you are our countrymen. Because you are just as guilty as those who are doing these things to us. Maybe not on the same scale. But guilt is guilt. Is one murder acceptable where 5 are not? Really? If you're wrong, you're wrong. And if you now recognize that you made a mistake, have the courage to at least say it to yourself. Acknowledge it. And admit that, you're human and you're fallible. You made a mistake. And then go out and make amends. Sometimes that amend is just calling up somebody that you had a discussion with. Sometimes that amend is standing up in front of a group of your friends or people and say, man, I really got taken. Sometimes that amend is being a leader in your congregation and saying, I'm a lay pastor here, and I've been intimidated and I've been afraid to speak out because I didn't want to endanger our positioning here. I didn't want to endanger our tax-exempt status by influencing the church with politics. I didn't think it had a place here, but it does. And going forward, we are not going to make that same mistake again. I'm not, and we're not. Because I am the shepherd, I am the leader, I am the person that you are looking to for guidance. That, folks, is the measure. You've been listening to America's Voice Now. Please find us on the web at americasvoicenow.org. You can find us on facebook.com/America's Voice Now. You can find us at patriotfb.com. You can find us at youtube.com/America's Voice Now. You can find us at Spreaker.com/user/America's Voice Now. Just /America's Voice Now. You can email me at mike@americasvoicenow.org, mike@americasvoicenow.org, and tell me what you think of today's shows.